Our next body system is probably one of the most underappreciated sets of systems that we have. This group of organs is responsible for maintaining homeostasis across a great variety of the functions in your body. And so that system is the endocrine system. The endocrine system is a group of glands that basically make hormones. And what do those hormones do? They regulate all sorts of activities that we're going to look at. So the endocrine system is definitely a long-term type of response. This isn't immediate movement type things, but it's in charge of long-term homeostasis, things like growth, development, hunger, sleep, those types of things. And it's really functioning with a group of chemicals that we call hormones. Hormones are chemicals that travel through the blood or lymphatic fluid and create a response in some organ. These hormones are produced by special organs, and we tend to call these organs glands. When we think about glands, you've probably heard of like a pituitary gland or a thyroid gland, and these are special organs located throughout our body that produce hormones. Each hormone that's produced travels through the blood or the lymphatic fluid and has an effect on a single type of cell, what's called the target cell or the target organ. And so there's unique hormones for every different type of process that we're regulating. And the hormones control the functioning of just that organ or cell within our body. So this is just a list of things that are controlled by hormones in our body. Growth, you could think of something like HGH, human growth hormone, which regulates a lot of your growth cycles, growth spurts. Also, there's all sorts of hormones that are responsible for building bone, muscle, etc. Development and reproduction, think testosterone and estrogen, really associated with puberty and reproduction. Cell metabolism, blood sugar, you've all heard of this one, think insulin. Okay, stress levels, sleep cycle, blood calcium levels for bone strength, all sorts of different hormones and endocrine glands at work in our body to regulate all of these types of long-term responses. A couple others that come to mind, one, melatonin is really important for sleep, and you can think of something as simple as adrenaline, really related to stress and stressful situations. This is just a look at the locations of these endocrine glands within our body. We've got several up in the key regions of the brain: pineal, hypothalamus, pituitary. These brain glands usually are sending hormones to other organs that also may release their own hormones. Your thyroid and thalamus are in your throat and chest. Adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. Pancreas is right next to your stomach. And then male versus female, ovary versus testes for the sex hormones. As I said before, each hormone is released by a gland up here. So this would be the gland, the endocrine gland for a hormone. And each hormone only works at making changes in a single type of cell, what's called the target cell. And so the change happens at the target cells. The hormone is produced by the gland. So what happens is the gland secretes the hormone into the bloodstream, most typically. The hormone will travel through the blood throughout the whole body and will bind to receptors on the surface of the cell or will diffuse across the cell membrane and create a change. Now, the receptors are very important because basically they're shape specific. Just like an enzyme, each receptor can only bind to one type of hormone. So when we say a hormone only produces an effect in certain cells, the reason is because those are the only cells that have the proper shaped receptor for that hormone. So this is a better look at that down here. We've got some hypothetical hormone that's got sort of a triangle shape on the front. And so receptors that will match that shape can bind to that hormone, while receptors that don't match that shape can't bind to that hormone. So the hormone has an effect on the cells with the proper receptors and no effect on the cells with the improperly shaped receptors. That's why the changes are only brought about in specific cell types. It's due to the shape specificity of the receptors. So this is just an example, a quick little example of how one hormone made by the hypothalamus and pituitary would regulate some change in the body. So the hormone that we're going to look at is called ADH. It stands for antidiuretic hormone. This is a hormone that's really involved with homeostasis of water, of H2O. Okay, so here's the mechanism. When your body experiences dehydration, that creates a set of changes in some cells called osmoreceptors that are present in what's called the hypothalamus. That's a region of the brain. As a response, those osmoreceptors send a signal to your posterior pituitary, which releases some ADH, antidiuretic hormone. ADH is going to travel through your blood and has an effect at two locations. First of all, your kidneys. ADH in your kidneys create some changes that reduce urine volume. Okay. Now, if you reduce urine volume, what you do is you save water. So if you're dehydrated, your first step is your kidneys are going to start to save water. The other thing that's often associated with dehydration is low blood pressure. So ADH will also travel through your circulatory system and create what's called vasoconstriction. Okay. Vasoconstriction is a tightening of the blood vessels, okay, which will increase blood pressure. Okay, so we've got two ways of counteracting your dehydration. One way is we're going to reduce urine production, and we're going to vasoconstrict to increase blood pressure. So two ways to slow down some of the negative effects of dehydration. And so those are broken down as step one. Okay, you receive the sensory information and you produce the hormone. Step two, you take the hormone to the target cell. Step three, hormone binds at the target cell. And step four, the change is produced. So that's basically how hormones work. Now there's two mechanisms that can regulate hormones. Most of the hormones that we've talked about today experience what's called negative feedback. And negative feedback, basically, if you wanted to make a simple definition, it turns itself off. Okay, so I'm going to explain this and I'll give an example. Basically, what's happening is the release of that hormone causes a change that suppresses, okay, that slows down further release of that hormone. And then what happens is the hormone levels get low in the body, the production gets turned back on, and we make more of that hormone. To kind of give an analogy, this is like the thermostat in your house. In your house, when your thermostat senses that it's too cold, it turns on your furnace, your heater, which produces heat, but results in negative feedback. As your house starts to heat up, it turns your thermostat off, okay, and your furnace turns off because your house is now warm enough. So that's negative feedback. One example of this could be in males. If testosterone levels get low in the blood, the brain will signal the testes to make and release testosterone. when those levels get back to normal, the testes will stop releasing that hormone, so your testosterone doesn't get too high. The other type of regulation is a little bit more complicated, and that's called positive feedback. And this occurs when the release of a hormone causes more of that hormone to be produced. And you can really think, you really generally wouldn't want this. This would really tend to disrupt homeostasis. You would keep building and building more and more of a particular substance, which I hope you realize would throw things out of balance. To use your furnace example here, your furnace senses your house is too cold, or your thermostat, senses your house is too cold. It turns your furnace on, your house starts to warm up, and then your thermostat says, keep making it more warm, keep producing heat. So your house will get warmer and warmer and warmer, and eventually be way above the comfortable level. The best example, the only example I'm going to talk to you about of a positive feedback mechanism is in human labor. The hormones that create uterine contractions, which we talked about earlier in the year, mainly oxytocin, have a positive feedback mechanism. So think about labor, those contractions that get stronger and stronger and closer, and that's because the hormones that are creating those contractions are building. The level in the blood keeps getting higher and higher and higher until what happens? Until delivery, okay? And the feedback mechanism for those hormones to finally turn them off is that once the placenta is delivered, the hormone production gets turned off, and so they can go back down, and contractions will eventually stop. But that would be a positive feedback. The release of oxytocin starts contractions, which causes the release of more oxytocin, positive feedback. So the one disorder that we're going to discuss for the endocrine system is diabetes. This revolves around the body's ability to control the blood sugar levels, and people who are diabetic can't control their blood sugar levels. Basically, in a healthy individual, when our blood sugar levels get high, we produce insulin from our pancreas. The pancreas, an endocrine gland, releases insulin. Pancreas is also a digestive gland. It makes some enzymes that help to break down your food. But here, as an endocrine gland, it makes insulin. And that tells your body cells to bring sugar into their cell and store it, typically as glycogen, but they could also convert it to fats. And that would decrease the blood sugar in your blood. And let's say the opposite. Let's say you were to start to exercise a lot and your blood sugar goes down. Those cells can then release the stored sugar to increase your level. Now, there are two types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes occurs when you have a defect in the pancreas and it doesn't produce insulin. This can be caused by pancreatic cancer. You can be born with this, genetic abnormalities. And so what happens in this individual is you tend to have really high blood sugar, but you can treat it with insulin. All right, so this person just needs to have some insulin shots when their blood sugar gets too high, and it will bring their blood sugar down. Type 2 diabetes occurs when your body cells don't react to insulin. So your blood sugar gets high, your body produces insulin, but your cells don't create a response. And so this really has to be treated with more of lifestyle changes and avoiding sugars and foods that would lead to increases in sugar, because it doesn't matter taking insulin if you have type 2 diabetes, it won't cause a decrease in your sugar levels.